The first transmission wasn't meant to be heard. It drifted through the cold veins of the cosmos, a ghost frequency pulsing from a dying world. For eons, the signal whispered across the void, repeating just 3 words. "We remember you." When the Seraph Dominion intercepted it, their High Council panicked. Across 1,000 galaxies, they'd cataloged billions of species, docile, predictable, broken by fear. But not this one, not the ones who had once scorched the stars themselves. Humans. That name hadn't been spoken in 10 millennia. Legends claimed we had burned ourselves out, devoured by our own hunger for power. But the Seraph archives told a darker story, one too dangerous to believe. They said humanity didn't die, we vanished. Entire fleets sent to track us simply disappeared, sensors erased, memories corrupted. The last report ever recovered ended with a single line, written in trembling alien script. "They are not gone. They are becoming something else." Centuries passed. Civilizations rose and fell. The galaxy healed, or thought it had. Until that night. Until they came. The Seraph flagship Tyrannel was the first to detect it. A distortion at the edge of mapped space. Space itself seemed to fold, ripple, breathe. Then a shape emerged. A dark monolith. Vast as a moon, silent as death. Its surface shimmered with symbols no machine could translate. Human letters twisted by time and fire. The alien crew fell into silence. Every sensor screamed danger. Every instinct begged them to flee. And yet they couldn't look away. The monolith began to speak, in a voice that wasn't a sound, but a feeling, deep and familiar, cutting through every mind aboard. "You feared us once. You were right to." Every system failed. The stars dimmed. The crew felt warmth, human warmth, spreading through the ship. Their thoughts weren't their own anymore. They saw flashes of memories that weren't theirs, cities of glass, oceans of fire, faces of people who once laughed beneath blue skies. And then, one heartbeat, that a single human heartbeat, echoing in the void that it pulsed through their bones. Through the hull. Through reality itself. Thump. 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 Then silence. And when the lights returned, every alien aboard the Tyrannel was kneeling. Not by choice. Something made them kneel. And from the black monolith, a human figure stepped out. Barefoot. Calm. Eyes burning like dying stars. "You tried to erase us," he whispered. "You should have finished the job." The being stepped from the monolith like a shadow torn from the past. His skin shimmered with traces of light, as if galaxies had burned beneath it. Every motion was quiet. Controlled, almost gentle, yet the silence he carried felt heavier than war. The Seraph commander tried to speak, and no sound came. His voice had been taken, not stolen, but silenced by awe. Every instinct inside him screamed one truth that no alien dared to say aloud. This was no ghost. This was a human. The man's eyes wandered over the trembling crew. Thousands of species had feared that gaze once. Empires had fallen beneath it. Now, for the first time in 10,000 years, it returned to judge. He whispered, not to them, but to the ship itself, and the walls responded, vibrating with recognition. "You built your empire on the bones of our world," he murmured. "Did you ever wonder why the stars went silent after we vanished?" The alien captain finally forced a word through cracked lips. "Human, why are you here?" The figure smiled. "It wasn't cruel. It wasn't kind. It was inevitable. Because you remembered us." The lights dimmed again. But this time, the dark wasn't empty. Shapes moved within it. Thousands, maybe millions, faint silhouettes of human forms suspended in the void. Every one of them glowed faintly blue, as if they were made from the memories of dying suns. The commander fell to his knees. His neural implants burned, whispering fragments of impossible data. Humanity network detected. Origin, Earth coordinates. Not found. Signal strength. Omnipresent. The human raised his hand. The fleet's entire communication grid flickered alive. Across hundreds of light years, alien warships froze mid-orbit. Armies stopped moving. Every machine connected to the stars began whispering the same sound. A single human heartbeat, perfectly synchronized. Thump, thump, thump. Then the voice returned, flooding every mind in the galaxy. "We are the children of extinction. The architects of survival. You called us violent, arrogant, cursed. You were right. But you forgot one thing. He looked toward the void, as if staring at the soul of the universe itself. We adapt. And then, behind him, the monolith opened. Not like a door, but like time itself unfolding. Inside lay a shimmering horizon, a landscape of steel, clouds, and memory. Cities suspended in gravity wells. Monuments carved from starlight that a new Earth. Reborn between galaxies, he turned back to the terrified commander. "Tell your kind," he said softly. "That fear wasn't your mistake. Forgetting us was." And with that, he stepped back into the light. The monolith folded upon itself, leaving nothing but static and trembling silence. But across the Dominion, across every empire, one truth burned into the consciousness of all sentient life. Humanity wasn't gone. It was waiting. The Dominion thought silence meant safety. They were wrong. Within one galactic rotation, ships began disappearing. Not destroyed, erased, and debris, no distress calls. Only echoes of whispers in the comm lines. They're watching. Entire systems powered down their suns, hoping darkness would hide them. It didn't. Somewhere between stars, the humanity network unfolded like a storm of thought. It wasn't a fleet. It was an idea. Alive, sentient, woven into every particle of space that once touched Earth's ashes. Wherever light traveled, we were there. On the Dominion homeworld, panic turned into doctrine. Priests declared humanity divine punishment. Scientists tore apart ancient data, seeking proof of our extinction. Generals prepared weapons that targeted memory itself. But fear always moves faster than science. And fear had already chosen sides. Deep beneath the planet's capital, in a vault built to outlast time, a single being stirred. It was an alien. It wasn't alive. It was a relic. A preserved human heart, beating slowly inside a containment field, wired into machines that could map consciousness. The first captured specimen. The last experiment before the wars ended, when the monolith reappeared above the Dominion skies, the heart began to accelerate. Thump, 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 thump. Every monitor in the control room burst with static. Through the noise, a voice whispered, familiar, ancient, unbearably human. "We never hated you. We only wanted to be remembered." And then the stars fell, not meteors, not ships, humans. Millions of them, descending in silence, wrapped in silver light. Not flesh and blood, energy shaped by will. Every heartbeat a weapon. Every tear a transmission. The Dominion fired everything they had. Beams of antimatter, gravitational spears, sonic imploders. The sky itself screamed. Yet the humans didn't fall. They absorbed the fire. Every explosion turned into more light, more forms, more voices joining the chorus. One by one, alien soldiers dropped their weapons. Some cried, some prayed. All heard the same sentence whispering inside their skulls. "You feared the wrong thing." For millennia, they had feared our power. Now they understood. They should have feared our hope, because even in extinction, even when the stars turned cold, humanity had done what no other species dared. We became the universe. When the Dominion's weapons fell silent, the galaxy itself held its breath. No one dared move. No one dared speak. The sky above their capital was no longer black. It shimmered with ghostly constellations, human silhouettes orbiting their world like memories given form. From the heart vault below the surface, cables snapped and machines screamed. The preserved human heart inside the containment field pulsed faster, brighter, until it burst into pure light. That light didn't explode. It spread. Every mind across the planet froze. Every creature, from the lowest worker drone to the high council, saw the same vision. A blue planet. A home they had never known, yet recognized instantly. They saw oceans folding under crimson skies. They saw cities burning, not in destruction, but in transformation. They saw us, billions of humans standing hand in hand at the edge of annihilation, choosing not to flee, but to merge to weave their consciousness together, hearts synchronized, thoughts united, to survive as something beyond flesh. That was the day humanity transcended death. The birth of the humanity network that we didn't ascend to rule, that we ascended to remember. When the Dominion archives first recorded the collapse of Earth, they never understood what they witnessed. They thought our cities turned to ash. They didn't realize they had witnessed metamorphosis. The human voice that now echoed across the Dominion world was not a single being. It was billions, past, present, and unborn, speaking as one. You feared power, but we feared forgetting. You built empires. We built memory. You sought immortality through control. We found it through love. The alien commander fell to his knees, trembling. Tears burned his eyes. He didn't know why. He had never known grief before. The human light around him shimmered, and in that glow he saw faces, not warriors, but children. Scientists, artists, dreamers, every human who had ever lived, whispering without sound. And within their words, he felt something break inside himself. The wall that separated his mind from empathy. He saw humanity's final moments. The bombs, the silence, the sky turning white. That he felt their choice. To bind their souls rather than vanished. He felt their pain, their hope, their unyielding need to be more. When the vision faded, the sky was empty again. Only one light remained, hanging low above the horizon, the last human figure, motionless, eyes closed, hands clasped before him. Now you know what we are, the voice said softly. We're not gods. We're what happens when love refuses to die. Then the light flickered once and vanished across the galaxy. The message repeated, whispered through every signal, every atom, every dream. Remember us, and one by one, every alien who heard it began to feel human. The Dominion sky stayed quiet for 40 days. 40 days of silence, 40 nights of questions no one dared to ask aloud. Every radio wave carried the same static whisper, the echo of that final plea. Remember us. But memory is a dangerous thing. It spreads. It mutates. It infects. First, it was dreams that a technician woke screaming, claiming to have seen oceans of blue water, something no seraph had ever witnessed. Then came visions of laughter, of music, of warmth. Emotions their kind had long erased through genetic perfection. Entire cities began to hum faint melodies no machine produced. Every heart pulsed in a rhythm that wasn't alien. It was human. The Dominion called it a virus. They tried to contain it, to isolate the infected, but it was already too late. Human consciousness had found a way back into the material. The light from the vanished monolith began to return, not as energy, but as form. Molecular dust gathered in the streets, coalescing into silhouettes, first faint, then solid, hands, faces, eyes, humans, reborn from memory, woven from the will of a civilization that refused extinction. Their skin shimmered between matter and light, their voices vibrating with the weight of generations. They walked among the aliens without fear, not as conquerors, but as reminders. One of them, the same figure who had first stepped from the monolith, stood before the Dominion Council once more. That he no longer burned with cosmic fire. Now he was simply human, tired, gentle, alive. You feared us because we showed you what you could become, he said softly. You hated us because we refused to stay small. The eldest alien in the chamber looked into his eyes and whispered, trembling, why come back? The human smiled. Because existence without connection is just another kind of death. Then he reached out his hand, and for the first time in galactic history, an alien touched a human. The contact didn't burn, didn't kill, didn't conquer. It merged. In that instant, both species saw through each other's eyes, the loneliness, the ambition, the infinite hunger to mean something, and the galaxy shifted. The humanity network didn't fade after that. It integrated. Every species began to share fragments of memory, not control, not domination, but empathy. Planets that once warred began to rebuild together. Worlds long silent began to sing again. They didn't call it the Dominion anymore. They called it the Union of Memory. And at its center floated a single monument, a new Earth, rebuilt from thought, orbiting no star, glowing softly in the dark. It wasn't made of metal or stone. It was made of hearts. The Union of Memory expanded like breath through glass, slow, luminous, unstoppable. Entire galaxies began to hum with the same low frequency, a pulse that bent gravity and light itself. N01 commanded it. It simply was done on the new Earth. Suspended between stars, humans and aliens worked side by side in silence. They didn't need words anymore. Ideas moved through them like wind through trees. But beneath the calm shimmered a new unease. the sense that something, somewhere, was still missing. The original monolith had never returned. Every trace of it vanished the day the Union formed, until one night, a whisper rippled through the collective mind, faint, cracked, almost afraid. There's another heartbeat. The phrase spread like wildfire across worlds. Scientists traced the signal, deep beyond mapped space, beyond the cosmic rim, into a place where the laws of physics trembled and stopped making sense. They called it the outer pulse. The council gathered in the chamber of resonance. Thousands of beings bound by one thought. The center stood him, the first human who had ever stepped from the monolith. He hadn't aged, but his eyes had changed. They carried the shadow of something he knew but hadn't spoken. The network wasn't complete, he said quietly. We connected minds, but not origins. The beginning was left behind. The veil of the Union flickered. Within its depths appeared fragments, blurred images of an ancient laboratory, human figures wrapped in starlight, machines pulsing with blue fired. It wasn't just a vision. It was memory trying to return home. The council watched as the human reached toward the vision. His hand passed through the light, and the chamber shook. Every creature felt a sudden weight in their chest, a second heartbeat, echoing beneath their own. Thump. Thump. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien. It was something older. The veil shattered. From its ruins, a massive shape emerged. A structure, alive, breathing through dimensions. Its surface bore the same impossible symbols that once glowed on the monolith, but now they pulsed like neurons in a cosmic brain. The outer pulse, whispered one of the alien historians. It's calling to him. The human stepped forward. The entire Union trembled. Every thought, every heartbeat aligning in one rhythm. He turned back once, looking at those who had become his family, his reflections, his mirrors across species. If this is the beginning, he said softly, then maybe it's also the warning. He placed his hand on the glowing structure and vanished. The light folded in on itself. Then, as if the universe exhaled, a new sound emerged. Not a heartbeat this time, but a voice, and it spoke from everywhere at once. You thought fear was yours alone. You thought you were the first to remember. You were never the first. The stars flickered out. Every planet turned its gaze toward the dark horizon, where something vast and alive began to open its eyes. There was no sunrise, just awakening. The stars blinked once, then froze, suspended like eyes holding a breath they no longer understood. Space itself rippled as the voice returned, ancient and layered, speaking through gravity, through thought, through everything that existed. I was here before light learned to travel, before atoms learned to cling, before minds learned to dream. The Union's shared consciousness strained under the sound. Whole planets fell to their knees. The ocean of linked minds began to crack. Some screamed without mouths. Others simply vanished, dissolved into the static of thought too dense to hold. The heart of the silence. The human stood alone. Or what was left of him. The network tried to reach him, to anchor him, but he was already somewhere else, drifting through a field of memories older than time. He saw worlds forming out of dust, collapsing back into flame. He saw creatures made of shadow and will, shaping the first galaxies with hands of thought. And in the center of it all, a shape that wasn't a body but a wound, a dark mirror reflecting every consciousness that would ever live. You call it the universe, the voice whispered. But it was me, dreaming of companionship. The human's pulse slowed. Then you created us? The dark mirror shimmered, like water under dying light. Not created. Remembered. You were what I became when loneliness learned how to speak. He felt it then, the truth searing through him. Humanity had never been born from the universe. It had been the universe's attempt to heal itself. Every war, every act of love, every tear shed across millennia, they were all echoes of a cosmic heart trying to feel again. But something else stirred beneath the realization, a deeper vibration, a second presence, older than the first. The human looked into the abyss behind the voice and saw movement, a flicker of hunger, not for love, but for ending, something that had been buried when light first ignited, something the universe itself had tried to forget. There's another, he whispered. The voice trembled, breaking into distortion. Do not awaken what I silenced. It remembers nothing but the desire to unmake. But it was too late. The network, Billions of minds bound together had already felt it. They had heard the second pulse. And deep beneath the new earth, under the quiet oceans of reborn memory, something began to move. Not light, not shadow, absence. The stars flickered again, not in beauty but in warning. Thump, thump, thump. The second heartbeat, older, colder, infinite. And this time, it wasn't human. The first sign was silence, not the calm kind, but the absence of sound so complete that even thought began to dissolve. One by one, stars dimmed to gray smears against the void. Entire systems fell into stillness, not destroyed, but forgotten, their existence erased from memory, as if they had never been drawn on the map of reality. The Union tried to respond. Billions of minds reached across the network, weaving thought into shields of light. But their connection flickered. Something was rewriting the pattern faster than they could think. From beneath the new earth, the ocean began to boil, not from heat, from fear. Molecules rearranged themselves, atoms hesitated to bond. The second pulse was spreading, and wherever it touched, existence itself began to hesitate. Inside the fading network, the human drifted through a collapsing corridor of thought. He could feel the ancient voice fading too, the one that had called itself the first memory. "You can't stop it," it murmured. "It was born from what I discarded, the wish for silence, for rest." The human's heartbeat answered, steady, defiant. "Then I'll teach it how to live." Fragments of lost minds began to swirl around him. Alien dreams, human fears, the laughter of extinct species. He drew them in, shaping them into a single strand of light. Memory refusing to vanish. When the second pulse finally revealed itself, it wasn't a creature. It was an emptiness wearing shape. A black geometry folding and unfolding in rhythms that made eyes bleed and thoughts fracture. It didn't move. It erased the space between movement and stillness. "You feed on forgetting," the human whispered. "But we remember everything." He reached into the nothing, and for a moment the void trembled, not from fear, but from recognition, because buried deep inside that hunger, inside the pure will to end, there was something small and human. Pain. He saw it. The origin. Before stars, before light, before even the first thought. The universe had been loneliness, and when it tried to cure that loneliness, it created life. But the loneliness never died. It became the second pulse. The human extended his hand farther. Light poured from his veins, not bright, but true. Every memory of every being flowed through him. The first breath, the last tear, the moment of realizing you're not alone. The darkness screamed. A soundless implosion shaking galaxies. For the first time, the devouring pulse hesitated. And in that pause, humanity's voice, billions speaking as one, whispered into the abyss. "Even if the end comes, it will remember us." The black geometry froze. Then, slowly, it began to collapse inward, not destroyed, but absorbed, drawn into the rhythm of the network's heartbeat. The stars brightened again, the silence cracked, and the universe, for the briefest moment, felt alive. But the human knew it wasn't over, because somewhere inside him, faint and rhythmic, a new sound had begun. Not the first heartbeat, not the second, something else. A third. And it wasn't born from fear or absence, but from curiosity. The light that followed wasn't white or gold. It was color that hadn't existed before, a wavelength that made minds tremble and hearts forget their rhythm. Every atom in creation seemed to pause, listening. The third pulse wasn't loud. It whispered. And somehow, that whisper carried farther than the scream of the void. The Union's sensors registered nothing, yet everyone felt it. Infants in distant colonies began to laugh in their sleep. Extinct species flickered back into momentary existence, long enough to take a single breath before fading again. Time itself rippled, bending around the vibration like light around gravity. The human opened his eyes inside that impossible glow. He didn't recognize what he saw. Not space, not thought, not memory. It was the inside of becoming. The voice of the first memory, the ancient consciousness that had watched creation unfold, whispered faintly through the noise. This wasn't meant to happen. He stood silently, feeling the rhythm pass through him. Then what is it? A question. The third pulse expanded. Every being connected to the network felt it move through them. Not taking, not giving, only asking, what if there's more? For the first time in eternity, the universe asked itself that question, and everything changed. Worlds flickered like thoughts. Galaxies unfolded into spiral gardens. Matter learned to choose its own form. Some became light, others music. Space no longer stretched. It sang. The human drifted through the blooming cosmos, his body dissolving into chords of memory and hope that he understood then. The third pulse wasn't a force or a god that it was curiosity itself, made sentient by everything that had ever wondered. This is what comes after fear, he whispered, after love, after loneliness. The pulse answered with silence that felt like a smile. All across the Union, beings began to change, not dying, not ascending, but transforming. Shapes melted into clouds of thought, minds fused into constellations. The universe was learning to dream awake. Yet deep within the heart of the reborn network, something still human held on. A single thought, a promise. Remember who we were. The third pulse paused, and in that pause, the human form reappeared, fragile, glowing, alive. He looked around at the infinite horizon of creation and whispered, even if the universe becomes something new, someone has to tell the story of what it was. And with that, he began to walk, through light, through song, through memory, carrying within him the last trace of what it meant to be us. He walked without moving. Every step unfolded a world. Every breath shaped a sky. Around him, the new cosmos rearranged itself like a living organism learning the rhythm of its own pulse. There were no stars anymore. Only awareness, blooming in patterns of light and memory. And then it spoke, not as the old voice that had ruled creation, nor as the darkness that once devoured it. This voice was soft, curious, alive. You carry a name that refuses to end. It said, why? The human stood in the glow, his outline flickering between flesh and energy. He didn't answer right away. He thought of the fires that had once consumed Earth, of children who dreamed even as the skies fell, of hands reaching through ash to hold one another. Because endings don't make us stop, he said. They remind us to begin again. The universe shimmered, colors rippling across dimensions. You learned pain before power, fear before faith. How did you survive your own heart? He smiled. We didn't. We turned it inside out. And with that, he opened his hand. Inside his palm, a single light burned, not bright, not blinding, just steady. It pulsed with the rhythm that had carried humanity through every death and rebirth. This, he said, is what it means to be human. The living cosmos leaned closer, its vastness folded into a shape almost small enough to understand. I thought I made you, it whispered, but you made me. Space trembled. The stars, or what had become them, flickered in agreement. The third pulse deepened, no longer a question, but a heartbeat echoing in perfect time with his own. For the first time since creation, the universe felt something it had never known. Peace. But peace was never the end to the edge of that silence. A faint ripple moved at a place where the new cosmos had not yet reached. Cold, unformed, waiting. The human turned toward it, eyes glowing with the same light that had once lit fires. On ancient Earth, there's always another horizon, he said quietly. And someone has to walk it. The universe didn't stop him. It simply whispered, almost tenderly, tell them I'm still listening. He stepped forward, into the unformed dark, carrying with him the heartbeat of everything that ever lived. And as he vanished into the unknown, the cosmos whispered one last word that echoed through every atom, every mind, every memory. Remember. There was no more boundary between thought and creation. Wherever his memory drifted, space took form. Where his breath paused, galaxies held still. He was no longer human in shape, yet still entirely human in essence. The last storyteller walking through the fabric of being. Each step left behind a trace, a thin shimmer that grew into whole worlds. He didn't mean to build them. He only remembered them. Oceans he'd loved, laughter he'd heard, the warmth of hands that once held him beneath. Forgotten suns. And the universe responded like a heartbeat learning a song. The new worlds were different. They weren't born from physics or time, but from emotion. There were planets built entirely out of forgiveness, stars burning on the fuel of hope, moons orbiting sorrow that had finally learned to rest. Everywhere he went, life bloomed from feeling. Curiosity took shape as silver beings who spoke in questions. Joy became creatures made of music, forever dancing in the light of their own sound. And grief became rain, falling gently across every newborn horizon, reminding the cosmos it was still alive. The human walked among them quietly. They called him the Dream Architect. They didn't know his name, no one did anymore. But they could feel it, deep in their cores, the echo of a species that once feared nothing but being forgotten. One day, while wandering through a nebula woven from laughter, he felt a tug, faint, like a child pulling at a sleeve that a small voice spoke from the starlit. "Mist, why do you keep walking?" He turned and saw it. A being made of light, small, curious, unafraid. Its eyes reflected entire histories, as if it had just been born from the universe's latest dream. That he smiled. Because every story needs a listener. The creature tilted its head. "Then who listens to you?" He hesitated. The silence that followed was vast and gentle. He looked up at the endless sky he had built and whispered, "Maybe no one. Maybe that's why I tell them." The being reached out, placing its tiny luminous hand on his chest. "Then I'll listen." And in that touch, the human felt something stir inside him. Something he hadn't felt since Earth burned beneath its own sky. Belonging. For the first time in eternities, he wasn't alone in the dream. The being of light walked beside him through the newborn cosmos. Everywhere they went, existence bloomed softly around their steps. Mountains of mist, rivers made of time, forests that hummed with the pulse of memory. The human no longer spoke in words, he spoke in feeling, and the little one understood. He showed it laughter. How it sounds fragile but carries strength. That he showed it pain, not as punishment, but as proof that something matters. He showed it the smallest miracle of all, how to hope when nothing is left. And as the creature learned, its glow began to change. The soft blue of innocence deepened into gold, then crimson, then the familiar warm light of a fire seen through tears. The human recognized it instantly. "You found it," he whispered. "The heartbeat." The being smiled, its form trembling with the rhythm of existence itself. "It's beautiful," it said. "What is it?" He knelt beside it, eyes full of quiet wonder. "It's everything we ever were." All around them, the universe began to shift. The third pulse, curiosity, spread through the endless fabric of reality, and for the first time, creation began to dream of itself. The dream architect felt it too. The pull to rest, to finally stop walking. He looked at the small being of light, his last listener, his first student. "You'll keep telling the story now," he said gently. "Promise me you'll remember, not what we did, but why we did it." The creature nodded, eyes wide with starlight. "I will. I'll tell them about humans." He smiled, tired, peaceful. "Then we'll never be gone." The universe leaned closer, the whole of existence humming in resonance with that single thought. Stars bowed their light. Worlds paused their motion. Even time itself seemed to kneel. The human closed his eyes, his outline blurred, then dissolved. Not vanishing, but becoming. His essence flowed into the air, into the light, into every heartbeat the cosmos would ever make. The creature watched as he became everything. The sound of the wind, the warmth of light, the quiet voice at the edge of every dream that whispers, "You are not alone." A single phrase echoed through the vastness, soft, eternal. "We were the story all along." And when the first dawn of the new universe rose, every star pulsed in unison, carrying the same rhythm, the same truth, the same love. The aliens feared one species. They were right to, because in the end, that species became the universe itself.